Hello Internet, I'm your pre-mortem host Dr. Chatter, back with another episode. I was out sick last week with a chest cold, and this week I'm going to continue with part 2 on cherry picking. My historical example to explain cherry picking and the difference between theist apologeticism and atheism is, of course, the famous notorious character Hitler. Now, many theists have actually said that Hitler is not a Christian and have claimed he's an atheist. This isn't true. Occam's razor is taking a theory or an idea and paring it down to the least complex variation of that explanation. Now, many times theists and apologists alike will get into the accidental logical fallacy of cherry picking due to their beliefs. There was a study that I recently heard about on NPR. They were talking about belief structures. That people that believe certain things not only tend to discount information that contradicts those beliefs and accept information that goes along with said beliefs, but also they will double down on their beliefs to refute the evidence that goes against their beliefs, which is often where they make the mistake. It is a very subjective, not objective way of looking at evidence. This is why science always looks for confirmation, always looks at all the evidence, and does not tend to cherry pick. So, going back to Hitler, what do some of the people say about his religious views? Well, there are many people that put forward the false dichotomy, as we know, one of the tenets of cherry picking. And the false dichotomy is he was either Christian or he was atheist. This discounts a wide range of information, and a lot of that has to do with his involvement in astrology, occultism, and various other religious faiths and studies and pseudosciences. Now, they will tend to focus in on atheism as being a root of all evil because it is one of the most fundamental antithesis philosophies to their own. It flat out denies theirs, but it also denies the belief structures of every other religion and many other forms of superstition, which has been fought against by many people, including famous magicians like Harry Houdini, as we will see an example of later. Religious people tend to be indoctrinated from a young age. They tend to be taught one way is right, the other way is wrong. Anything that doesn't go along with them is put into the latter category. So the blasphemy of denying that a person like Jesus existed or that a thing like God exists is considered blasphemy and considered one of the biggest things for them to rail against. In fact, it was also one of the biggest things that Hitler railed against. He did not like atheists and actually made laws against them, which many of the theists and apologists tend to discount because it conflicts with their ideology that science is an atheist religion. Science is not an atheist religion. Science is knowledge. That's what it means. That's the definition of the word, is knowledge. And it seeks proof. Empirical, physical proof. It doesn't just rely on the eyes. It doesn't just rely on ears or anecdotal evidence. It relies on every conceivable bit of information scrutinized to find out what is the real cause. We've seen this with many experiments such as the debunking of spontaneous generation in microbiology. That's a fun one if you want to look that one up. I'll talk more about it later in another video. But as I was saying, theists like to discount that information, getting rid of the information that conflicts with their own theory as towards their opinion that Hitler was an atheist, helps to reaffirm their idea that Hitler was an atheist. Now, ironically, the discussion of Hitler's beliefs is often presented in this way. Either he was a theist or an atheist, but no one ever suggests he might be an agnostic, and only a few other offer such choices such as pagan, polytheist, pantheist, deist, or simply bad Christian. Because of this, they lead most people into the false dichotomy. Not only do you have to look at the good and the bad, but the ugly as well. And as far as Hitler is concerned, he was a very notorious individual and a very, very famous public figure, unfortunately. And I understand a lot of people don't like to be associated with him because he was such a mass murderer and a Looney Tune. But they also go as far, and this is a theist apologetic kind of argument, that Hitler banned the Bible in churches. He, in fact, did not ban the Bible in churches. He went after occultists as well. He went after astrologers as well. And he even utilized the occult and astrology in his regime. Not just before he came to power, but afterwards, which is the irony. And we'll get into more on that too. But a lot of Christians tended to go in with things such as spiritualism, the occult, and pagan, so-called pagan practices, because that's just the way things were back then. And we will have many examples coming up that I will illustrate this on. But to say that he outlawed the Bible, well, that would actually make his book Mein Kampf a relatively moot point. If he were to replace all the Bibles with Mein Kampf, then how would people ever really truly understand when he talks about the Almighty Creator? At that time, he was definitely Christian. In fact, he painted various Christian things, including a painting, if I remember correctly, was actually Mary, the Virgin Mary, and Jesus as a baby. And you'll be able to find links to this down in the links down below. So don't worry, you can check those facts out yourself. However, to say that he's an atheist, to say that he banned the Bible, it's an outright lie. Just an outright lie. It's not true. He obviously had spiritual beliefs. And this goes forward all the way up to the time of his death. Just after he got married, albeit in a civil marriage, to Eva Braun. And why was it a civil marriage? Well, he didn't happen to have a chaplain on hand at the time. And yes, the Nazis had chaplains. We'll have more on that as well. However, perpetuating a lie such as he banned the Bible only strives to make your side look like it is the better side when it in fact is a misinforming side and therefore not the good side and not the right side. Atheists were considered to be asocial people because they didn't believe in anything. Which is another reason why there's a difference between theism and atheism. A theist argument is basing its argument off of staunch belief, which falls prey to logical fallacies such as cherry-picking more than a lack of belief or skepticism. There has to be proof, there has to be evidence, and when we find that, we will put that all together with the rest of it for a more complete and accurate picture. But let's continue on for a second and talk about some other things. He was raised and confirmed Catholic. He wrote Christian propaganda into his work Mein Kampf, paraded Martin Luther's work, The Jews and Their Lies, at parades in Nuremberg, celebrated Christmas with soldiers and other people, shared one of his birthdays with the Pope, and if I remember this was Pius XII. He also assembled the, and I hope I pronounced this right, the Oberammergau Passion Play in Bavaria during the 1934 build-up to Easter. Passion plays are notorious, especially in this time and before, for being anti-Semitic, blaming Judas, blaming the Jews for the death of Christ. And Hitler himself, after attending this and I think even beforehand too, thought it was wonderful, spoke highly of it, and tried to use it to help further his agenda of the final solution. Now, this passion play is also said to have been one of the biggest passion plays ever seen in the world. But sadly, passion plays such as the Oberammergau Passion Play are still being performed to this day around the world. Passion plays are notorious, just like Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ, for helping to promote anti-Semitic fervor amongst Christians. It's not a good thing. It's something that the Catholic Church has actually spoken out against, although this was after Hitler. So let's see a little bit more about the Oberammergau Passion Play. Again, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Disembodied voice, if you will.
Well, thank you, Dr. Chatter. Well, let's see. The Oberammergau Passion Play in 1934 was a special Jubilee season. It marked the 300-year anniversary of the original vow to reenact Jesus' passion and suffering, which was supposed to happen every 10 years thereafter, and was the first performance after the Nazi regime's rise to power the previous year. Among other things, the Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda ordered the official poster for the Jubilee season amended to include the message, Deutschland ruft dich, or Germany is calling you. And the Kraft durch Freude Schemes discount travel program offered special cut rate packages to the Passion Play, including rail fare, tickets, and accommodations. Official propaganda described the Passion Play as a peasant drama, inspired by the consecrating power of the soil, with Hitler attending the performance and wound up endorsing it wholeheartedly as one of the greater anti-Semitic agendas of the Nazi regime. And an attempt to rewrite the Passion Play script to bring it in line with Nazi ideology was rejected by the more conservative element.
Thank you, disembodied voice. I see you're not disembodied anymore. By the way, nice body.
Well, thank you, Dr. Chatter. I like it too.
Did you know that Henry Ford also attended passion plays? He attended one in 1930, and afterwards also began writing more things that were anti-Semitic, putting them in his newspaper known as the Dearborn Independent. What about Pope Pius XII, the one that actually signed the treaty with him? Well, the treaty was called the Reichsconcordant, and it was the first treaty that the Nazis actually signed with any political faction. In the Reichsconcordant, it said that they would actually leave all the Jewish converts to Catholicism alone and take the ones that didn't convert, which was okay with the church. This is where it gets interesting. The Nazis, of course, did not respect their treaties. They didn't respect any of them. They kept backstabbing people because they didn't trust anybody else. They thought they were the only ones that deserved trust and loyalty, and demanded it of everyone else. But we'll learn more about their duplicitous nature against converted Jews to Catholicism in a little bit. What stopped a lot of these anti-Semitic thoughts throughout the church? Well, that was actually the reforms perpetrated by Pope John the 23rd, who was so well received and so well beloved, and his reforms were supposed to help open the windows, that after his death, they kept going with his reforms and issued what's called the Declaration on the Relation of the Church to Non-Christian Religions, or the Nostra Aetate, which means in our time. It was proclaimed by His Holiness Pope Paul VI on October 28, 1965, and essentially said, stop saying the Jews killed Christ. We know where it leads. Stop doing it. We don't need a final solution. Jews are okay people. By the way, continue to look down at the bottom to find notes on where I'm getting my information. So what are some of the other beliefs that he had that helped spring about this idea of a spiritual Hitler? Well, Hitler had 42 attempts on his life, as well as a couple that he claimed to have during World War I. All of these gave him the idea that he was being looked out for by some sort of divine intervention or providence, and thought that he was going to be destined to, of course, do great things and be well remembered and well loved. Unfortunately, as I've also mentioned before, his regime was known to be intolerant of atheists, and they were not allowed to join the SS. To join the SS, you had to have some form of Christian type philosophy, believing in a German God, a Catholic God, a Lutheran God, and there are some articles that actually say he actually agreed with a little bit of Calvinism. Now, he did a lot of other things, such as dabbling and talking about racial genetics, which was a stem of eugenics, which was essentially what the elite were calling this newfangled version of supposed reproductive replication. Is very similar to horse breeding. If you take good specimens, mate them together, and they produce offspring, then those offspring should also have good traits that come from their fathers and their mothers. However, there's a problem with human genetics. Human genetics don't work like the genetics of horses or dogs or cats. Humans, in fact, have 23 pairs of chromosomes because when they were apes, they had 24. 2 of those chromosomes have recently been found to have fused together to create 23 base pairs of chromosomes, which is why there is proof for macroevolution. It is what separates us from the beasts. We actually have fused chromosomes. All humans do. Let's continue on, shall we? Hitler also had an astrologer named Erich Jan Hanussen, who performed occult rituals with not only mandrake root for Hitler to remove a curse and provide him with spiritual power, but also denoted his rise to power through astrology and the problems associated with it, as did many other astrologers. In fact, a lot of the inner circle of Hitler used astrologers and dabbled in the occult. But then again, they also persecuted it too. The Nazi Party had a connection to what's known as the Thule Society, a rich group of anti-Semites that got together and helped provide and actually form the German Workers' Party known as the DAP, which later became the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or NSDAP. Hitler himself secretly went there to infiltrate it and find out what he could learn for the military, but liked what he heard and eventually was able to rise to power in it and help to sever its links with the Thule Society, which is ironic. There's also another thing. He didn't believe in things like the Big Bang. He actually believed in what's known as glacial cosmology or world ice theory. This was proposed by an Austrian engineer and inventor named Hans Herbinger, and I hope I pronounced that right. Well, judging by my battery, it's time to put this episode to an end, but we'll be coming back next week with part 3 in this series, where we continue to discuss Hitler's spiritualism and the dichotomy of what people say is his supposed atheism. Until then, I'm Dr. Chatter reminding you that knowledge changes the world. Tacos!